Good.
Good afternoon. I'm Annie Sophia Drew Harper. Well, to be perfectly correct, I'm Annie Sophia Drew Price Harper because I was married before. My first husband, George Price, and I married right after the war between the states. And he was a captain of the tugboat, the Joe B. Davidson. But like many a good captain, he went down with his ship. And I was left alone as a young widow with a small baby, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But then, pretty soon, a new gentleman caller came along, and his name was Captain James T. Harper. Well, one thing led to another, and before you knew it, we were married, and we had 5 children. So altogether, I had 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. I had my Jesse. Now, he was from my first husband, and he became a captain just like his daddy, and he spent his whole life right here in Smithville. And then I had Robbie and Charles. He became a doctor. And then my 3 daughters, I had Lilibelle, Mary Rebecca, and Annie Kay. Now, they all grew up to be fine, upstanding citizens, and I was very proud of them. But most of them had to relocate to Wilmington for the opportunities. Now, my husband, Captain Harper, he had businesses down here in Smithville and up in Wilmington. But his most interesting business was his steamship line. Now, he and his brother both owned steamships, and they would travel up and down the river, back and forth, carrying people for business and for pleasure and for the mail. And it was very nice, but it was also necessary, because at that time, our roads were terrible. Why, you could hardly call them roads. I mean, if you wanted to travel from Smithville to Wilmington by road, it would take you 10 hours at least, and it would be a most uncomfortable 10 hours. But on the other hand, you could travel on our steamships, and it would only take you 3 hours. And you could sit and talk with your neighbor and visit, and you could look at the water and the scenery and listen to the birds singing, and maybe have a little sip of tea. And before you know it, those 3 hours were gone, and there you were. So they were very popular, and people enjoyed it very much. But more and more over time, my husband and I spent more and more time up in Wilmington. But we would always come back to Smithville to visit our friends and to enjoy those salubrious breezes. I'm sure y'all have felt those. Well, then, long about the time I was 69, I passed away. I had the stomach cancer. And my husband, he put me on his ship for one last ride down to Cape Fear, and he brought me here to Smithville as my final resting place, where my heart had always been. And a few years later, when he passed, why, his brother put him on his ship and brought him down and buried him right next to me. So we're very blessed that we can be here together for eternity. Now, I noticed that you were kind of looking at my flag. Are you curious about it? Would you like to see it? I can show it to you. I bet it's not what you think it is. I'll just unfold it here. So this flag here, this is the first flag of the Confederacy. Well, to be completely accurate, it's the first flag of the Confederacy had 7 stars, and then a few months later they changed it to 9 stars, and then finally they changed it to this one, to 11 stars. I'm partial to this one because North Carolina was the 11th state to secede from the Union, so one of these stars represents North Carolina. I like to think it's this one right here. So this flag is called the Stars and Bars. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the flag of the United States of America, but that one's called the Stars and Stripes. So this is Stars and Bars. It's a little bit different. Now, what they did with these flags is they would take them into battle and they would carry them into battle. And now sometimes the generals, they didn't get down into the fighting. They kind of stayed off to the side, and they would watch what was going on and all the men fighting, and then they could send in more troops where they needed them, or pull back troops where they wanted to pull back. And the way that they could tell that it was whose side it was by the flags. But now if you picture on this battle and all this commotion going on, and here you got the stars and bars flagging here, and then you picture the stars and stripes over here, well, it could get right confusing on who was who. So they decided maybe they should change it up. So there's another Confederate flag that got real popular. I don't know if you've heard of it, seen it. It's got a red background, and then it's kind of got a blue crissy-crossy on it. Well, that's actually the flag for Virginia. It's Robert E. Lee's battle flag, but it got to be real popular. So they put that here, and then where the bars are, they made that all white. So it was very attractive, very handsome flag, and they were real excited about that. And then they took that into battle. Now imagine you're fighting in the battle, and there's all this smoke and all this bullets flying and smoke from the cannons and the guns, and the people are falling, and you're looking for your troops where you go to rally with your troops, and all of a sudden you look up and there's someone waving an all white flag. It didn't exactly rally the troops. So they thought, well, maybe we should change it again. So this time, what they did was they left everything the same, but then down here, right down here, they made a red ball going this way. And so when you hung it up, it kind of looked like it was dipped in blood. So I'm sure that was a fine flag, and I'm sure that would have worked real well for them. But, you know, it was getting to be the end of the war, and we didn't have a lot of money for more flags, so we didn't make too many of those. But that was the final one. So the reason I have this flag, I'm real fond of it, and the reason I have it is because it reminds me of the proudest day of my life. And that day happened. It was at the beginning of the Civil War, and well, we had the Smithfield Guard, and you know, everybody had their own guard. Like every county, every township would create their own guard, and all the men, the boys would go off together and fight. So we had the Smithfield Guard, and the ladies of Smithfield, they got together, and they decided that they'd make a flag for the men and to take into battle with them. And they asked me if I would present it to them. And I was quite honored, and I said yes. And then they asked me if I would say a few words. And well, my daddy helped me write the speech, and I'd like to tell you a few words of it. I won't tell you the whole thing, but just to end it, so you can kind of get a flavor of it. So picture, we did this at the courthouse. Now y'all know where the courthouse is. So where the fort is, and then it's across the road from the fort, next to the Episcopal Church. So we were there, and the men all lined up. They were all standing there, and they looked so handsome, and they're all wearing their new uniforms that their mamas had just made for them, and they were looking strong and healthy and brave and maybe a little bit nervous. And then I was there. I was only 17, and I was a frail little thing, and I was real proud. My mama and daddy were there, and but I was a little nervous too. And okay, so here's what I said. Okay, gentlemen, the ladies of Brunswick place their lives and their honor in your keeping. Come back to us as conquerors, and we will line your brows with laurels. But if the number should overpower you, then fall with your faces toward the foe, and we will cherish your memories like household words. We will bedeck your graves with flowers, and we will water them with our tears. your graves will become like pilgrim shrines, and our matrons will bring their children there and tell them tales of your glorious deeds, so that they may learn how brave men died. And now, I present this flag to you for your safekeeping. Do you suppose they were comforted? I do. So I have one last thing that I'd like to say, and that's that I meant those words I said on that day, and I do think it's important to remember the people that came before and the people that sacrificed for us. And so I hope that someday you'll be able to come down here to the burial ground and wander around and get to know some of the people that lived in Smithfield before you. And as you do, keep in mind there are men here who fought in the Civil War. There are men here that fought in the Revolutionary War. And there's men here who fought in other wars for our freedom and our country. And as you walk among them, don't be afraid to whisper a few words of thank you. I know they'll appreciate it. So thank you so much for sharing your time, and have a blessed day.